From hometown shenanigans to international intrigues. From the bicameral fissure at the center of your brain to the pulsing heart of our universe, your frequency is ascending. Revolution Radio. Revolution-radio.com. RevolutionTalkRadio.com. RevolutionRadio.tv. Not sure where that comes from. FreedomSlips.com and RevolutionRadio.rocks, because we are the hammers and we are the nails. You don't have to look for us because we've been hiding behind your couch the whole time. We're Strange Universe Radio is proud to present StrangeUniverseRadio.com. Look us up. The pinnacle of 16.4 billion years evolution. Really? Who would actually call me right now? Nobody I care to talk to. Where was I? Oh, yes. The pinnacle of 16.4 billion years of evolution. The Scott Farkas of Internet Radio. See, now I'm just completely off my game now. The 5-star general of Generation Y. America's sweetheart. The pinnacle of 16.4 billion years of evolution. The program that's like watching lesbian porn. You never quite know when it's over. And the show that's marinated for weeks in a special secret sauce. So you can taste the difference. With your host, the man who bowls overhand. The man who is the life of parties he's never attended. The man who, if you were to punch you in the face, you'd have to fight off the urge to give him a big kiss. The man sharks have a week dedicated to. The man chihuahuas have never barked at. He's just that intimidating. The man who never saves for a rainy day. As a child, when asked by a teacher, what would you like to be when you grow up, he answered, myself. The man who has found Waldo several times, but has released him because he enjoys the hunt. And the man, if he slept with your girlfriend, you would brag about it to your buddies. And bear hugs are what he gives bears. It is I, the Dr. Ambassador, Professor Sean David Morton. I'm the doctor and I save people. Doctor Who coming back September 19th. Okay, a couple of cool and kind of scary things that are happening. First off, Cliff High is going to come be on the show today. He's just horning in. He just feels like he's got something to say. He says, Sean, I got something to say. He calls me sounding like a very large black man, actually. I got something to say. So Cliff High has something to say. And when he has something to say, Strange Universe is who he calls first. The man who's probably, along with everybody else, been banned from Coast to Coast AM. Me, Richard Hoagland. Oh, just to show you what a petty little mustachioed clown Mr. Snorri is. But Cliff is going to be here, and he's going to bring his prognostication machine, the Wayback 2000, and he's going to talk about all that stuff. A couple of things. First off, it's of interest to me. I knew that this happened, and I was told by my wife to not talk about it. Oh, God, no. Don't say anything about it. I don't know why, but now it's all over the news, which is very interesting because she was there when it happened, and it's now made international news. I mean, she saw it go down as it occurred. She had a career of working the main gate at Disneyland, and she stuck it out for, I think, like almost 2 years. Long time. Actually, I think I've got an interview there just to work Jungle Boats. My goal in life, to work the Jungle Boat ride. Yes, I may have to quit Revolution Radio to go to Disneyland and work the Jungle Boats. Just for fun. Just to say I actually worked the Jungle Boats. So she was on the plaza. This was on July 9th, and now we knew about this as it went down. I think she was there. I'm not sure if I was there that day or not. But I wasn't there to see it happen. She was, because she was out, I believe, either on the plaza or at the gate specifically. And this is what they're not telling you about what is going down here. A man at Disneyland came through security. Now, I'm not sure if they're talking about this now because they want to maybe institute new security protocols at Disneyland. I mean, as it stands now, you have to wait at the entrance to the plaza. There's a plaza between California Adventure, which is on the south, and then actual Disneyland, which is on the north, and then you have two security gates on the east and the west. A illegal alien, and let me, and this part may not be accurate, but let me give you an idea here, and this is what the media is not telling you. An illegal alien, a Mexican illegal alien, who, of course, is from San Francisco, because San Francisco is what they call a sanctuary city. And how's it working out for you, San Francisco? You just wanted to add to that hobo population? You just really wanted to destroy that city completely. It's not bad enough you have a carpet of cannibalistic hobos basically lining Market Street. You have to, I mean, you just step on them as you go through. It's like tile. Along with the glorious wafting smell of urine. Isn't that wonderful? Where they're just everywhere in San Francisco. And apparently you just all tolerate them. Apparently you just think, well, that's just the greatest thing ever. Let's just have homeless and immigrants and crime. And every time I go to San Francisco, by the way, something bad happens to me. The last time I was there, actually I didn't get to go. I went to the I was sick. I was down with this horrible bronchitis. I couldn't talk. Couldn't speak. What a glory to the world that was, eh? So I had to cancel. I as of the day before, I had to call Kenny, who runs the San Francisco New Living Expo up there. And I tried to make it, so I called him Thursday. Actually, I had my wife call him because I couldn't speak. My wife said, "Look, Sean's just too ill. You didn't pay for a plane ticket. They expected me to drive up there. I don't know why I take these abuse from these guys anyway." So because I didn't have a plane ticket, I had to drive in the car, then go up there and talk on Friday night, which was ridiculous. Because every time I go up there, I sell everything out. It's crazy. It's like an appearance by Jesus. Shut up. And he had me on at like Friday at 6 o'clock, which is a complete waste of my talents and abilities. And I protested it. And then I think I was on a UFO panel the next day on Saturday, but it was a complete waste. And the last time I was up there, I don't understand it. I mean, I sold out the room. It was crazy. It's people are pushing and shoving and pushing people down to get in so that they can get to, I mean, people line up like an hour before so they can get in the front. And so the only reason I'm talking about this is because the last time I was going to go up there, I had to cancel. And then he just said to my wife, he said, well, he could have told me sooner, and just hung up the phone on my wife, with my wife calling and telling him, look, he can't come. He's physically restricted to his bed. He's got this bronchitis, walking pneumonia thing, which is just bad, bad, bad. So this guy, this Mexican, whatever it is, criminal, sorry, he's a criminal, came to Disneyland. What the hell? Oh, yes, that's who it is. So came out to Disneyland, and he made it through security. He was wearing a long trench coat, apparently, and he had a gun tucked in the back of his back, in the small of his back, tucked into the belt. And apparently, as he blazed through security. By the way, these security people have no special training at all. They're just Disney employees, really. And all they're there to do is just look through bags, not pat people down or wand to people or do whatever, because it's Disneyland. And there are cameras everywhere. On one, it's Disneyland. Thank goodness. There's cameras everywhere. There's infrared cameras inside the rides. So don't think you're going to sneak off a quick one on the rides. They will see you in infrared. I remember being on there with my Uncle Tommy, who was the same age as me. Obviously, we were kids, and we were on the Haunted Mansion. We were just screaming for fun. And a guy came out, the most horrific moment of my life. A guy came out with a flashlight, grabbed me by the throat, shined the flashlight in my face, and said, "You kids shut up," on the Haunted Mansion. And we beat our pants. We were so scared. So this guy came through, and he dropped something. And as he dropped something, whatever it is he dropped, he bent over to pick it up. And the trench coat that he had V'd in the back, showing the small of his back, and somebody then saw the gun tucked in his belt. Not even in a holster, but tucked in his belt. And moments later, I think it may have been a park employee, or not a park employee, but actually a civilian, a guest at the park, who then saw the gun in this guy's belt and told security. And moments later, as this guy was crossing the plaza, he was descended upon by the Disney security people, who do not screw around, by the way. They have a whole bunch of plainclothes guys who sort of hang out, and Melissa pointed these guys out to me. and they jump him. Now this guy had 4 clips. He had, I think, loaded gun and then 4 clips. They were saying he had approximately like 36 bullets. And his whole goal was to get into the park and start shooting people during the fireworks. Like while the fireworks were going off, he was just going to unload and start shooting people in the crowd. And they stopped him. Now, again, crazy guy from San Francisco, illegal alien as far as I can see, Mexican from there who decides to just come down and do what? To pull a psychological operation on on Disneyland. So anyway, now it's being announced in the news. This happened, as I said, on July 9th. And we knew all about it, and the employees at Disney knew all about it as well. And I don't know why they're releasing it now, but it's one of those delayed reaction kind of deals. Probably because the guy is up on probation, or it's kind of hard to hide that kind of stuff. So it's anyway, just one of those things we knew about. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about it earlier, but my wife said, oh God, no, you can't tell everybody. But now it's all over the news. I thought it was odd that I thought Channel 7, which is owned by Disney, would possibly break it up. All right, now Cliff Eye's on today, and actually there's a confluence of events here with Cliff, and we're going to see if we can get Cliff to the point today, because it seems that with a lot of Cliff's predictions that if these pan-national events were actually going to transpire, I would think that Cliff would just get in his boat and sail into the sunset and just give up on civilization, go live in a tree somewhere. Because, clearly the events he's talking about are of a disastrous, world-changing nature. And I'm not sure if he's building a Hogan or a Kiva or a hole underground or a bomb shelter or whatever else. But we're going to talk to him about his web bots and see if they hold much favor or ability in my limited worldview to actually accurately predict the future. So we're gonna get to it. We're gonna make sure that today he's not just Balder and some dash and a little bit of horse and not too many feathers. But here's the other point, that if he's talking about zero hedge, maybe not up to the task of confronting the reality of certain things. But, I mean, that's just kind of a throwaway statement on my side. But the thing that bugs me, and I don't mean to get off on a rant here, that no one outside, and in my writing book 3 of Sands of Time, and having access to all the information that I do, and giving you a tour de force of what's going on at places like Area 51 and Dulce and the secret government, no one outside the closely controlled inner circle can even know all the various parts of what is really going on behind the scenes. And my exposure to this world was from the inside, and I had a great deal of information, which until this day, I will not openly share with anyone. But that is because the cost of trying to bring all of this to the light of day is so high that no one can imagine the end results. I had friends like Danny Castellera. And Danny Castellera was probably – actually, I heard about Area 51 from the astronauts that were my friends and those of my father's friends. And Danny Castellera wrote a book called The Octopus, and he told me about Area 51 and something called the Promise software, and Danny was murdered. Went to Michigan, I think, to follow up a leave. He worked for Computer Times magazine here in Redondo Beach. Jim Keith also – both of them, Danny Castellera and Jim Keith, came closer than most. And they were killed for it. A good friend of mine, Bob Hunter in Berkeley, had thousands of documents, records, and photographs of only one part of all of this. And the net result was that he died in a car that was exploded on Telegraph Avenue. His sister was murdered in the house they lived in, and his mother was suicided. The house was ransacked and emptied of all of his work, was just simply gone. The handlers make it very clear that they will not just kill you, but everyone that you love first, everyone that knows anything about it, and then finally you. That is the control that they have over people like Danny, Jim, and Bob. So what is the conspiracy that no one will talk about? It is very simple, actually, and does not involve some ancient and arcane sect or cult or bloodline, even though that is part of it. It is about a decision that was made in the late 1950s in which a group of people looked at the patterns of the world. They looked at the patterns of this world. And in looking at the patterns of the world, they made certain decisions. A bunch of very smart, brainy guys made certain decisions to do certain things with full knowledge and created a plan. To graphically present it, it would look like a set of concentric circles around a central hub, and each circle contains a level of priorities for accomplishment. Each circle provides material to the next circle inside, and so on and so on and so forth, until everything meets in the center. Go ahead, Steve. The center is where the group that I talk about in Sands of Time 1 and Sands of Time 2, and now in Sands of Time 3, this is 10 years after Book 2, 10 years after the events of Ted Humphrey and his father and Rufus and Simon Ratterman and Ann Corbett and all that. But the group that controls it all, that's where it resides. So the first and primary question is, what is the end game? Money and power, right? Dead wrong. In the 50s, in the 1950s, they realized that we had both exterior and interior forces that were going to eventually destroy this planet and its population. If mankind was going to survive again, and again, we've survived over and over and over again. There's been super technology using forces on this planet for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Even in Genesis, it talks about how the earth had become void. So the earth was here when it was real started, but it's done it 6 times before in prehistorical time. And they need to prepare everything for it. So the gathering started as it was known. People were selected for their brains, for their insight, and were placed into positions that they could garner and control all valuable information and then act on it. This included material science, physics, chemistry, and all the hard sciences. Also applied sciences in the form of systems, computers, aerodynamics, medical, genetics, psychology, alternative agricultural systems, energy systems, and everything else. And since the 1950s, 1 in every 200 patents have not been granted, but were classified, and the inventors threatened at the highest level with results coming from any disclosure. And these patents were then placed inside controlled environments to percolate into workable systems. Hundreds of thousands of individuals were employed at all levels to prove, produce, and assemble the real things without them even knowing what they were doing because of compartmentalization. Human studies of space exploration were done, not for spaceflight, but for long-term isolation in specialized facilities where those selected would be placed when needed to be the gene pool for further generations after the event horizon occurred. And this can go on and on. Okay, turn it down. On and on and on. And I'm not going to bore you with all the details. But from RAND to Brookhaven Labs, they worked without knowledge to provide systems that were stated to do one thing and used for another. And all of this right in front of everybody's nose. And they still did not see it. The true secret is the reason for all of this. The core issue that started and continues to drive this work, which does affect everyone, every man, woman, and child on this planet, politically, socially, and economically. But we, as individuals, really don't matter in the large scheme of things. There's a survival of the race is what's important in the end. And all one has to do is follow one item or system and watch what happens. Take, for example, you probably may or may not have ever heard of the Avro car. John Frost was one of the finest aeronautical engineers in the world. And he was the driving force behind the Aero project, a fighter that was light years ahead of anything in the world. And that system was destroyed. And AV was bankrupted because of it. Yet he was the guiding light behind the Avro car, which later became the Silver Bug project in the U.S. after the supposed failure of the Avro car in Canada. Now, if one just looks and does the calculation of that system one would realize that the systems worked as planned. But it was moved inside the circle, where it was used by those inside to achieve actual spaceflight years before the red herring of NASA used 100-year-old technology. 100-year-old technology to get to the moon. Rockets. And this list goes on and on, but what's the point? It's interesting, of course, but no single individual, small group, or large population is going to halt the movement and desires that have been planned so meticulously, so carefully. Inside the circle, there are no political oppositions. The lines are interwoven between all-powerful groups working collectively for the same end. The end result will be a smaller population of selected and tested individuals that will see the future through eyes trained from birth to accept this new order as the only order. Master, not slave, theoretically will be born, and the mundane will all be done by machines. It's another reason why the movie Tomorrowland was so important. And yet was completely, first off, the editing was probably completely slammed. They took out anything that was politically incorrect, anything that went against the big companies and corporations. It was the best that Disney could do. And what I'm hoping is that the director of it puts together the 20 minutes or 30 minutes of footage that they cut out, and they then release it on a Blu-ray or DVD, just so the film will make an actual point. Because it did, actually. But at some point, the Earth will be allowed to return to its beauty and majesty without interference. We will be star people exploring and expanding into space. Hunger, fear, disease, even death is not going to be feared. You might, very soon, you could probably do it now. There's movies about it. I think Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley just did a movie about it, where you'll be able to actually completely download everything in your brain and upload it into another living body at some point. But right around the corner, it's coming. No one will want for anything. That is the conspiracy. That is what is being protected. These breakaway civilizations at places like Dulce, at places like Area 51, at places like the Moros Plain in Brazil. But until the point arrives, all and everything will be done to prepare for it. 2 generations, almost 3 now, have now given their lives to this end. And there will be more without thanks and without gratitude. And that is because most people feel they are important. I'm important. And they cannot see a world without them. But that is not the way of the universe. And for us to join that enterprise, we must cull out, unfortunately, this is what the people on the inside mean, we must cull out those that don't matter. Doing our NPR smooth jazz on Wednesday, NPR Smooth Jazz. And, of course, the smoothest of jazzy men around we have with us, the amazing, the stupendous with his web buys. Cliff High. How you doing, Cliff? You eating a lot of brownies? How's it going?
Yeah, actually, I finished off the pan 2 days ago, though.
Oh, good, yeah. We at Strange Universe Radio did that, too, today. All right, good news for you. I just have one announcement to make. Obviously, Hoxfest is Labor Day weekend. I want to thank Andrew Burlington for sending me $50. Thank you. I got to come up with like $500 to go to this thing. So we have, I said 10 people. If 10 people could send me $50, I could go. So we got one person that sent $50, and I need 9 more. So, hopefully with Cliff on today, once again, this is me begging, saying, yeah, if I'm going to get a ticket to Louisville to be able to go there, it's $500 for me to go. And, if I don't really want to hear it from my wife about, I just sit here and work while you flounce around the country. My wife actually used the word flounce. Like I was a fat lady in a multi-layered muumuu or something. I'm flouncing around the country, apparently, according to her. So, in order for me to flounce to Hoxfest and do my best flouncing on Labor Day, I'm going to need some flounce and cash, man. You want to see the flounce? You gots to pay. That's all I can say. So, we need 9 more people to send me $50. So 9 more people, you can send $50 to either support at strangeuniverseradio.com, support at Strange Universe Radio. You can PayPal it, just make it for friends and family so they don't take out that ridiculous 3% fee. And or I guess you could send it to Revolution Radio and just earmark it for, Sean's flouncing. You can actually put the flouncing by Sean so he can flounce out to Louisville, Kentucky and go to Hoxfest. All right. So that's my plug, for all of this. Cliff High, erudite, amazing, gentlemanly, Already, we have people asking questions, so I don't know if you want to launch off with this. Okay, so here's a question from JP. He says, can you or Cliff comment on these broad beams of light?
Sure, I can. That was one of the reasons that we're talking.
That are being photographed all over the place. Is that blue beam or space laser platforms? And are they making holes in the planet like Deepwater Horizon and this factory in China? Oh, that's interesting. I mean, like the factory in China that exploded. Sinkholes being tests of a device like this. Okay? Any comments on that?
Sure. The sinkholes have nothing to do with the beams of light. The sinkholes are a natural part of the expansion of the planet as what we think of as the plates pull apart. The plates are really giant interconnected boulders, and as they separate, all different kinds of things are going to separate and fall down. This sinkhole business is well known. It was written about in the Harappan Valley civilization that predates the current Hindu civilization, and they made note of it. Then they were forced to move because of the formation of sinkholes. And where did they live? Right at the juxtaposition of the Indian subcontinent to the main Eurasian plate, where, of course, as they separate, as they move further apart, you're going to get basically debris falling down. If you think about it this way, when England separated from the EU, from Europe, what happened? It ripped apart, and the stuff that was in between fell into the gap. You see this by looking at both Calais and Dover. Calais is the worn-down part. Dover is the sheared cliff that survived. So you can see the mechanisms going on. Now, the beams of light may indeed be part of the Chinese issue there. It wasn't a factory that exploded. There were 3 ships with the sodium that were at the dock, and there was a tank that actually blew up on the other side of the building. There was no sign of the light within the videos that I saw, but of course the videos that I've seen are mostly the aftermath. The Chinese, though, are acting as though they are trying to answer a question. And just knowing how the Chinese think, because of my contacts with them and the martial arts history and all this kind of stuff. And if you've ever read their seminal book, Journey to the West, you know how the Chinese think about things. And so in reading that, you get basically the idea of how they're approaching this now, because the Chinese overlords or Politburo have a real tough problem here. Was that an accident? Was it, as they say, an act of heaven? The will of heaven? Or was it a beam from space? At the moment, they've got their helicopters flying over all kinds of sensitive areas in a virtually 24/7 mode. Now, one of the reasons to do that would be to cause disruptions if you thought that there might be attempted interference by cohesive energy beams. Cohesive energy beam can be thought of as lasers or any of these kind of things. If there was a helicopter in between the beam and the target, the beam will fail, the helicopter would be sacrificed, but you'd sure know about it, and the scattering effect would tell you what was going on.
Well, this Chinese explosion, there are 85 firefighters that remain unaccounted for. There were at least, I think, 20 dead. There were over 400 people that were injured, and the question becomes whether or not China was attacked by something that's called the Rod of God, which is a space weapon for hacking into, might be a space weapon for hacking into Wall Street computers, but China was hit, maybe, and here's the theory, that China was hit because it devalued the yuan, causing the United States petrodollar to rise, thus creating hyperinflation in the United States currency. That's resulted in the elimination of about 6 million U.S. jobs. So out of frustration, the United States government hits China's second largest financial center with a space weapon as a warning. And by the way, this is not the first time that if this weapon was used, that it's been used. And I can tell you for a fact that it was also used on August 11th of 1999 to generate a huge earthquake in Turkey, which was also called the Finger of God or the Rod of God. There's been video of these things of what looks like a flame tornado off the coast of Iran that cooked pods of dolphins. I used to present this video in one of my speaking presentations. But China may know who's responsible for what took place in Tianjin, and China and Russia may retaliate because these crazy satanic bastards in Washington may be dragging this nation and the whole planet into World War III. Any opinions on that?
It was the Federal Reserve a response from what you can think of as the cabal headed by the Federal Reserve that actually did the hit here. They were the same people that paid the CIA $1 million to overthrow the republic that was created in Iran and replace it with the Shah in 1953. It's always goes back to the banksters. They are not the be all and end all of the power chain, but they were probably the ones that paid the Navy or the CIA or whoever it is that has their hands on the space weapon to do this.
So you're in agreement with that. You're in agreement with that assessment then that maybe the target the target here. Hold on, the target was sodium cyanide, which is primarily used in gold mining operations as a critical component. Go ahead.
Correct, and see that was the whole issue is everything pointed at money. Not only was the sodium cyanide was there because the Chinese have been buying gold mines, because their gold mine operation is getting very large. They lied when they came out. They're always going to lie about it, but they lied in a serious way. They were deferential, and this was in the WebBot sometime back. I should have set up a page just to follow this one here. Actually, if we go back about 2.5 years, there was a forecast about the satellites and laser weapons being used on us. But the Chinese lied recently when they came out and said they had only added X number of tons to their deposit in gold. Everybody knows that this is the case. The reason that they were lying, the reason that they lied was to try and play nice in order to ease into the IMF and get as part of this special drawing rights, the SDR, the next level of money after the current paper fiat scheme dies, or at least that's what they hope. Would be the SDRs, the special drawing rights. But what happened was the Chinese were literally slapped in the face by the IMF. And so at that point, which is basically, the IMF is run by the United States, it's owned by the United States, it's funded by them, created by them, and it's part of the whole criminal power gang. And so the Chinese are responding as they should have by saying, okay, guys, you don't want to play nice. Well, here we go then. And within 3 days, they devalued their currency 3 times, and they also announced more gold holdings. And so what was struck? Their ability to mine more gold. They've been seriously set back by these 3 tankers going up. Not just the damage there, but the loss of this part of their supply chain. So it was indeed a hit that way. But the Chinese were not the bad guys here. They, everybody has to accept the fact that we live in an oligarchy, a kingdom run by a bunch of psychopaths, and we have all of our lives. We've been lied to by the school system. The whole thing is all propaganda, and you need to shake yourself loose of the idea of America, the shining beacon on the hill kind of stuff, because the people that are running our organization here and own the U.S. are the slime molds in the sewer. And they will do anything.
Yeah, we don't play fair. I keep telling people we're the United States. We do not play fair. We do not play nice. We do not make your country better. We kick in your front door. We molest your daughter. We take a poop on your pillow, and we do donuts on your front lawn on our way out. That's the United States.
We are the shining beacon on a hill, but if you look carefully, we're actually the Eye of Sauron.
Well, that's the scary part, guys.
Thank you, Steve, for the Tolkien references.
Yeah, in Vietnam, it was known that we threw 11,000 people out of helicopters as part of our torture process. 20,000 people disappeared totally. We're not nice guys.
Well, I would say the Vietnamese the North Vietnamese were particularly pleasant to us either. So I think that's kind of fair game there.
We were not invited, guy.
Kind of were. Yeah, actually, we were by the South. We took over for the French. Another war we took over for the French, but
the whole thing was another false flag. And the good news is that false flag now is one of the most searched items on the internet. The people are talking about this. We've broken through a conceptual barrier with over, I think, probably close to 7% of the population reading how the linguistics are flowing, right? And so we're over a critical mass at some level. I thought it was 10%, but apparently not, because the way it's starting to snowball. And so in the last couple of reports I put out, I've noticed that within the trends that we get out of our one entity that I call the Space Goat Farts, which is where we store all of the unknown and officially denied stuff, I've noticed that one of the trends it's forecasting is this ballooning or blossoming, blooming of the network effect around conspiracies, where it used to be that, if you had two people in a stadium, you've been in those stadiums. In fact, you were one of those people, Sean. You were sitting there watching football one day, and you discussed right next to the guy next to you one of the conspiracy things that was going on. I don't know what it was. It doesn't matter. But the rest of the stadium, the other 20,000 people, were oblivious to it.
Oh, I
now,
see.
however,
Was it me trying to actually explain the game of football, the David Wilcock, which actually happened, which is
it could be.
I'm not kidding. I took him to a football game.
I know.
It's like, so why are the green guys like all mad at the red guys? And I'm like, because it's football. There's like a lot of anger, people are like yelling. I don't know why. And my wife was like, you sit me next to this weirdo and I will punch you in the throat. I tried to be his friend, but all right, so there it is.
But you take my point, right?
Yes.
But now we're in a stadium where maybe out of every one of the clusters of seats, there's a couple of people talking some conspiracy stuff down there, and a lot of other people are listening in and actually paying attention. So the level of perception of it all has taken a big boost up. Not good for the bad guys, not good for Hillary, not good for Jeb Bush or any of these other crowds, right? The whole power structure is at risk. So these guys are
the hilarious
not
part,
right there with the
let
Chinese.
me just interject one thing there. When I went to go visit Stacy, the stripper economist that we've had on the show, and you've got strippers talking about this stuff. You've got strippers going,
well, hey, you know.
It's the Illuminati scumbags. I'm telling you, the people in the back, when you got girls in clear heels going off on this stuff, it's over. You just do.
Yeah, they're done. There's no question about it, right? But it's going to be interesting to see how the masses shift as the pressure is put upon them, and they start becoming aware of how they've been manipulated. All the people that would go to the various different kinds of like football games and use the Il Carnuto and all of those kind of hand signals and stuff, right? Not knowing a clue about what's going on. The symbology and how it interacts with the mind and stuff. But it's going to be quite interesting here. The Chinese explosion, it's all part of the warfare that we can call currency wars. The U.S. is really, really irritated, or the Federal Reserve is really irritated that the Western Empire has been put at risk by the Chinese devaluing. They were counting on the Chinese maintaining a steady interlock with the dollar such that no inflation could show up in the relationship between the gold-backed yuan and the paper-backed dollar. And thus they would be able to, quote, raise rates and save face. But it's not going to happen. They never could raise rates. It was always going to be a token and then quickly another huge dump of fake money into the system to try and keep it propped up. But now they don't even really have that option because the Chinese have basically said it's a race to the bottom, boys. Let's see whose paper stands up longer. And we know it is not going to be the dollar. What people don't understand is how the Chinese monetary system works. They actually have a two-tiered currency, which probably the U.S. will come to as well. And the two-tiered currency is international exchange settlement in the gold-backed yuan. But the internal country of China uses the RMB, the renminbi. And so the two are sort of linked, but they're not the same thing. And so it's not the U.S. dollar running up against the currency that the Chinese populace uses. It's the U.S. dollar running up against this international settlement currency that the Chinese use that they will back with gold if you're a country. And so everybody on the Silk Road, the Russians, the BRICS, even the Arabs are saying, yo, man, hey, gold, give it,
In the long run of this, and also remember that China did not allow its citizens to actually own gold until I thought it was about 2000. I thought it was about 2000 or so, or 2010. I'm not sure it was back that far, but I know it was only the rise in the prices of gold. They had to have been back when gold was about $500 an ounce before it went crazy and before it went up to like $2,000. That they then allowed their citizens to own gold, which is another reason why the gold market has exploded so much. And so we had another question also that people wanted to ask you about electrics. Sure. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Sure, the new electrics, right.
Yeah,
the new electrics is a long-running thing, again, from the Space Goat Farts entity, okay? And that's where we keep all of these...
The what?
Okay,
Space Goat Farts? What?
Okay, all right. Let me back up then, and I'll take a little drink of water.
We're talking about goats passing gas.
Gas in space, right, sure.
Space Goat farts. Okay.
Okay, mutant giant space goats, okay? How are they to propel themselves from planet to planet when they go to eat it up?
Yes, okay. All right. Got
Okay,
it.
so, and this is how we know we're in that environment when everybody in the whole planet says, you know one of them has been by, right? Anyway,
All right.
in 2003, I was doing a data run, and I finally accepted the fact that I had to restructure some of my set theory to accommodate what the data was showing me rather than the design I'd had in my mind. You run into this as a software engineer frequently where the problem refuses to fall into your nice little idea of a plan. And so what I ran into was all this data that was continuously showing up around all of the officially denied and actual unknown subjects. So I'd get a data set that would say basically the word unknown is going to show up and it's going to have red wings and blue hooves, and I wouldn't have a clue as to what was going on. And then something later you'd see that it was a parade and there was a horse that had red wings and its hooves had been painted blue. This is just a far out example. I'm not saying that that's how it worked, but I ran into all of these data sets that made no sense unless we accommodated the idea that we live in a propagandistic universe by actually setting aside a set that reflected that by acknowledging all the officially denied and unknown stuff. Make sense?
Okay.
Okay, so the space goat farts is that area that has been prescient in predicting things that are really outside the norm. Like I did the blondes on boats out of the space goat farts entity. That turned out to be the blonde distracting the captain on the Costa Concordia and sinking that boat. So you get some really good prescient,
okay. Right.
very good prescient data out of it. And I think a lot of it is because we don't know, because it is unknown and there's so many unknowns. Now, I can do a very terrible job of interpreting it because there's the officially denied component and then the unknown part of it.
Okay.
But in the main, it has turned out to be a fairly robust way of looking at things. And so the Space Goat Farts entity predicts like the interaction between the Breakaway Civilization and the us Earthers, because there's no really other set to put it in there. It affects the markets entity, it affects the global population entity, but it's not really housed within either. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed.
And I operate everything on set theory, which is this basically a outgrowth of object-oriented programming. I got hooked on that way back when. And so it just basically set up a system where there's all these collections of data that all go into these various entities. Now, what was the question again?
New electrics.
Oh, New Electrics. Yeah. New Electrics showed up in about 2003 with the creation of that entity. And it was basically, I had the word new, I had a lot of the words unknown and denied, and then I had the words electrics that went to the idea of a fundamental breakthrough in the sense of 0 point energy, or something along those lines. Basically not zero cost because there was going to be a capital expenditure in it, but zero operating cost in a safe kind of a device for up to 10 to 15 years, and it would power, it was described as having something of a level of flexibility where you could plug it into your car or you plug it into your house or, your small compound, and it would accommodate the electric needs of all of that. And basically once you built this, you had power from it 24/7 without worrying. And so it was describing the disintegration as well as the disruption, this disruptive technology that would bring about the disintegration of the global power grid, because there's not going to be any need for these wires running everywhere. Plus, the power grid is supposed to, in the U.S. anyway, is going to suffer some horrific problems over the next 2 years and need a quick replacement that we won't be able to afford because we can't produce the steel and make new towers and all of this kind of stuff. Excuse me. So it makes sense?
Yeah.
So basically that's New Electrics is what we all think of as like Star Trek kind of energy without the, what were they, dilithium crystals or something. And in fact, this may have dilithium crystals. I never saw any details towards it.
Absolutely right. I downloaded a weird thing, and I'm not sure if I got scammed by one of those by one of those internet ads or not, but there was a guy who came on who talked about how he was from the town that Tesla was from, Similjan, or one of those unpronounceable places with no vowels in it, from Croatia. Sure. And it was a coil. He gave I spent $49 on this. I figured, what the hell? And it's I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, and you folks can go out there and look for it. But it was a coil of some kind that Tesla demonstrated to a group of these. And I don't know why these scientists do this in the first place. This happened with Royal Rife. It happened with Nikola Tesla. It happened to all these guys. Royal Rife gets a bunch of doctors together, about 400 doctors, and he has this microscope. At USC, by the way. He went to USC, and it was between USC and San Diego. And Royal Rife puts together a microscope with optics that rivals electron microscopes to this day, and was actually able to view viruses. I'm getting off of it just a little bit here to make the point. View viruses, and then he cataloged the viruses and showed that if you hit the viruses with an opposite color and an opposite sound, that you can actually disrupt the vibration of the frequency of the viruses, and in essence, you can cure everything. Now, he gets in front of a gang of doctors and says, "Guess what? I have a machine that can cure everything, and you guys are going to be all out of jobs. Isn't that great?" And the next day, they sued him, and he became an alcoholic, and they destroyed the guy. Why? And the same thing happens with Tesla. Tesla gets everybody in his laboratory, and I think this is when he was in Chicago. I think because I get mixed up between Chicago and New York, but I believe it was in Chicago, his laboratory, and he lights a light bulb with the regular power that's coming out of the building, and then he puts this device on whatever's generating the electricity. And that's Dave Brubeck, Little Smooth Jazz on NPR, National Petroleum Radio. With the smoothest of the smooth guests, we've got Cliff High calling from the smooth Pacific Northwest with even Stephen Travesty, Mr. Smooth, Mr. Furry Smooth, and of course me, the Sean, having eaten an entire plate of special brownies. Coming to you on NPR Radio, Strange Universe. What is that all about? Holy cow. That kind of classes up the place, I guess. Dave Brubeck. That's actually Take 5 by Dave Brubeck. From Dave Brubeck, the Essential. Actually, on Essential Dave Brubeck, they don't have Take 5. How can you not have Take 5? I mean, that's the only song anybody remembers by Dave Brubeck. What's that? I think that's Nighthawk. He's trying to be funny. Okay, just here's an update on Sean's Flouncy Flounce Fund, just to buy me an extra large moo-moo, I guess. Okay, he says, all right, Hawk says he'll pitch in $50 out of his own pocket. Holy cow. That's like pulling teeth. And, okay, so he's got $50 in the bucket. And, Cannon Sanders, want to say thank you, Cannon. Cannon Sanders just put in another $50. My buddy Andrew Burlington put in $50, so I got it. So that's $150 for Sean's moo-moo flouncing fund. So my wife is, you're just going to go flounce around the country. You're just going to go flounce. So if you want to see me flounce at Hawksfest, I got $150 against the $500. So I still need $350. So anybody wants to pony up either all of that, we can put an end to this nonsense of me having to beg you for money to go somewhere, or not. Or if we can just get a few more people to. Originally we wanted 10 people to just donate $50 to put that in. So there it is. Okay, we've got. What I was explaining, actually, the Tesla coil, you can go online and see this. And I downloaded, I don't know if I can forward it to you or not, or it's blocked or whatever, but I actually downloaded the PDF on how to build this thing. Of course, it gives you a list of things that you actually need, like, a soldering gun and all these things that, and of course, here's the garbage man. Stand by a second. I have the Athens Garbage Services, which apparently the only Greeks in the world left working and actually making money. So, in Greece, they don't work at all. Here, they work till they're dead. So,
that's, Sean, we gotta stop, these, rampaging assumptions that are invalid. The Greeks actually work harder than anybody in Europe. They put in more hours every week. They're the victims of the banks.
They retire at 53, these people. They don't have a word for taxes.
Yeah, but hey, look at the demographics of the Greeks. Only a very small percentage of the male population survives till 63.
That's because of all the ouzo they drink. I know.
Well, maybe so, but nonetheless, they are really hardworking people, and it's a misnomer.
I used to go when my stepdad and I lived in Egypt. I had a friend that I went to school with that was a Saudi prince, and he was worth about the kid was 15, 16 years old. He was worth $6 billion. And we'd jump on a private jet with Mohammed, who was a 6'7" Muslim as our quote nanny and bodyguard. He was like Lurch's dad, this guy. And but we would go to Athens, and here's their schedule. They wake up about 10. They work maybe from like 10 to noon. Then they sleep from noon to 4. Then they open their stores again from 4 till about 6. Then they go to dinner. Then they party all night. They party until about 4 a.m. and then they go to sleep. And then rinse, lather, repeat after that. Now,
and this is bad. How?
look, Mexico.
No. I understand what you're saying, though.
Mexico wanted to be a first world country at one point, and at one point somebody raised their hand and said, I think it would be a good idea if between noon and 4 o'clock if we all took a nap. And so again,
it has to do with the heat too, guys.
Their entire first world country kind of. I think whoever voted on that is a genius. But from noon to 4, I think and we'll call it a siesta, and we're all just going to sleep. Okay. Well, you can kiss your first world country aspirations goodbye after that.
Okay. So can we?
Let me also say that the as far as the Greeks go, it's now being found out that that Goldman Sachs has completely. I mean, they've rampaged through that country. They are now being found guilty. And this was, remember, 2 years ago. They had headlines that said, I ain't hating, I'm just stating. They were like, hang the Rothschilds, kill the Jews was like the headline in their paper that they were holding up in these riots because they knew the banks were raping them. And now we've discovered that Goldman Sachs has now gone into that country. They bankrupted their hospitals. They bankrupted they fixed the books on all these things. So while the Greeks were still trying to pay for the 2004 Olympics, remember, that's what got them into trouble in the first place, trying to pay for that. Oh, come on. Really? Hold on a second. Here's the garbage man. They had to go down the street. Now they got to come back up the street. All right. And stop here again. Okay. I got to close the door again. Hold on. In my multi-million-dollar trailer studio in the deserts of Pahrump. If you want to talk about Greece, we talk about Greece because we got other questions.
No, but basically we're talking about money, okay? And it's everywhere. You're talking about money. You need money. Everybody's got this. Everybody I ever run into up here is poor and is broke, and the circulation of the money through the system is way down. And we know that this is the case because you can see where all the money is going. It's going into the mega rich. They're given the money right out of the tap by the feds and the banks when they create it. I've just gone through the experience of trying to sell my mother's house and dealing with the banksters there, and you wouldn't believe the teeth-pulling agony at the low end of trying to get bank loans. But at the high end, you're given 0% interest and off you go and as much as you want and you can never fail and so on. And this is all part and parcel of the breakaway civilization. Ever since, I would dispute it was in the 50s. I actually think that the first instances I'm able to come across are in the 1920s where things were swooped up and taken away by someone and actually there's an even earlier instance of it in 1830, but that's a separate deal, separate from the UFOs. But in the 1920s, there were the airship things going around the planet from the 1890s had still continued into that period, and we started to see things disappear in a fashion then. That's when they locked up the Grand Canyon and all of the items were taken away and removed into the Smithsonian. Right. It took them like 30 years to clean that area out because they were still doing it into the late 50s. But nonetheless, it's all about money. I wanted to run through some stuff here real quick that everybody will notice themselves. Right. We're in a heat wave on the West Coast here. It has to do with money. The reason is they've had to slow down the coal plants. The coal plants produce this nasty waste product called fly ash. The fly ash is swept out of the coal furnaces that produce electricity on the East Coast and all around the planet. The fly ash is this really fine, dusty stuff composed of all these minerals. It's put into with a little bit of water to make a slurry and stored in these big tanks. Up until the early 90s, it was costing the coal factories $1 billion a year to store this, and several times a year you would find that something broke, one of these tanks or repositories broke, and you'd see areas flooded by it. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but you'd have these flash floods of fly ash in the east. slurry that would come down and kill people and destroy farms and so on. Anyway, since the 90s, all that has disappeared. Where has it gone? Well, we're breathing it. That is, the fly ash is taken in a slurry form and put into the airplanes, and that's what they spray out as chemtrails. Now that the coal plants are running out of steam, so to speak, now that they're being shut down in the U.S., the raw material for the chemtrails is starting to run out in a very serious way. Again, a money issue. They were being paid to dispose of this. They've gotten rid of it, but now there's no one to pay them. Plus, we're now starting to run into, even though we have lower fuel costs, we're starting to run into much higher costs to run the airplanes to keep the whole thing going for the chemtrails. That's why we have the very weird heat and atypical blending patterns across North America and into most of Europe. And a lot of it has to do with them running HARP and the other ionosphere heaters to try and overcome some of the deficit that they see in the lack of the fly ash above us. But I've noticed a distinct level of the linguistics that have shown up in the last 4 months indicating the chemtrails are greatly reduced. And we've never been this hot up here in the Northwest. I've never seen this many days in the summer without chemtrails in probably, I'd have to say, since 2003 maybe. And that's when they really got started. So we're in a situation where the money is starting to affect everything. And what's basically happening is that we're walking around with a giant tick on our back that sucks out energy and labor at a huge level. And it's the breakaway civilization that Sean's been writing about all this time in the sands of time. And they're starting to bleed us dry. They've actually bled us to the point where the system itself is collapsing under the weight of the giant tick sucking out all this money.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, it's not the tick, the parasite, is never on your back. The tick, which is the banks and the lawyers and the government, is always on your jugular vein, right behind your ear, because it's always whispering in your ear about, no, you need me. You need me.
There you go. There you go.
And we talked about the disasters that are about ready to hit the United States. I was saying that we're going to have this triumphant of pain, where I described it yesterday as Galactus is going to hit the East Coast with whatever's going to go on with what is being predicted as the coldest. The Farmer's Almanac is actually saying it's going to be the coldest winter ever, apparently in history. You've got what they're now calling the Godzilla El Nino, which is about ready to end our flooding problems here. And of course, Jerry Brown, while he's trying to build his $68 billion choo-choo train to nowhere, has done nothing to prepare by actually putting in dams to actually catch the water. Because California we go through 5 years. We usually go through 5 years of a drought, then we go through actually 7 years of a drought, and then 5 years of too much water. But he won't build dams because he figured, well, if I don't build dams, no one will come here. And
no, there's probably another reason though, Sean, too.
Hold on, let me finish my analogy. With the Midwest being attacked by the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, as I said, where it's just going to go up through the center part of the country, and we're looking at, well, I don't know if it's a viscous white goo that spreads itself there, but once again, you're going to look at probably massive flooding in Texas. The tornadoes are going to be completely out of control. So now, and also, Steve just sent me a text here saying that on Fox Business and you always want to look at the profile and the portfolio of George Soros, because George Soros is behind the scenes and all this stuff. So here you have Obama on the one hand, who has, and we've never seen this before, by the way, we've never seen a president personally set out to bankrupt an entire industry, which is what he's done with coal, as an example. And now George Soros is now buying into coal. So he obviously thinks that the Republicans quite possibly are going to get in, and that the coal industry is going to have somewhat of a comeback. But with the El Nino hitting the East Coast, with this savage cold that we believe is coming, which of course is the snow in the East Coast, with the Godzilla El Nino on the West Coast, and then whatever the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is going to do to the center. Do you have anything specific regarding the WebBot predictions about
what winter?
Appears to be a massive weather disaster that's about ready to possibly ruin the economy of the United States?
No, well, the economy's shot, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay,
I'd just worry about surviving the winter.
We'll bring it back. All it's going to take is Donald Trump. We'll bring it back.
Well, no, we got to get rid of the Fed. It's going to take a lot more than that. A lot more than Trump. And we've got to get rid of this tick on the jugular that's taking away all of the money, all the resources. The data actually shows that we're We're going to have a very terrific winter, a very horrific winter, one of those frozen in place kind of winters. One of the memes that we've run into both in the markets and in Space Coat parts, where a lot of the weather stuff comes from, is freeze. So in the markets entity, it's all about the credit freeze, and then in Space Coat entity, it's all about the frozen from space. So you can think about the idea of cold. Okay, cold at the North Pole is not because the angle of the sun is too oblique to impart heat. All right, that's absolute rubbish. If you're going up in the North Pole region in the summertime, you get strawberries the size of pickup trucks. You've got so much heat. They get enough light and heat to do anything they need. Cold comes into the poles because of the nature of the spherical planet and the atmospheres around it, and the toroid that goes through the middle of the planet, which draws down basically cold from space, if we want to think about it that way. The atmosphere is less dense at the poles and slopes out in an opening funnel. So it's very less dense up in the ionosphere in the poles. That's why all of the HARP kind of guys are situated up there. Right. But in any event, those kind of things have been dropping down in very unexpected places. I don't know if you want to call them cold vortices or cold tornadoes or what, but our data sets have tracked these things for a number of years, and we're due for another round of them. And they were going to get one. Well, it was responsible for the polar vortex, that new language showing up and everything. It was one of these cold things coming down, and we're going to get another one of those that comes down. And the data is showing that it's going to come down in a relatively unexpected place. It wouldn't surprise me if it was like Virginia or North Carolina. And there's also going to be a confluence with a hurricane, so it's going to be a snow cane.
Wow. Is it?
And that's just part of it all.
Well, not only the snow cane, but last year there was a phenomenon where the snow seems as if it was chemical, where the snow itself that was coming out, people were trying to burn it with blowtorches, and the stuff. What it looked like, it looked like when you try to burn a styrofoam cup, and the styrofoam cup just kind of curdles.
Yeah, I've seen it up here. It's just amazing. And I don't know what it is. It's
any clue? It's just here's the thing. It looked like
goo
that's coming down, or
no. Chemtrails are actually because if you look at the constituents of the geoengineering samples that have come through, absent any of the weird stuff like desiccated red blood cells and that sort of thing, right? Just get any of the
syphilis.
Yeah, but see, that's very small. Those could also be poorly done samples with pre-contaminated glassware, etc. Right? So just getting rid of that. If the one thing that's consistent is the consistency of the chemtrails is this high aluminum, basically fly ash. It meets all the requirements. It looks identical to the chemical constituents of fly ash, and it's doing the same thing that fly ash does in the wild, which is kill things, all the plants and everything. So and
make your grandpa forget who he is.
That too kills people as well. Yeah. That's why I'm doing everything I can to survive the onslaught of both the radiation on the West Coast and the onslaught of the chemtrails. In terms of protecting the brain, etc. That's a whole nother subject everybody needs to really explore. But getting back to the snow stuff, it reminded me of a polymer. As you say, I deal in resins all the time with the boats, and it looked like a half-gelled. It looked like you hadn't put enough hardener into the resin, and so it was never ever going to really gel up. It just kind of like squished on you, and a very bad thing when you're building boats. But it was just really odd stuff.
Wow!
But it was heat resistant, no question about it.
Well, go.
I would say part of the chemtrails. I don't see how that long chain polymer could have come from the fly ash.
Right. Quick update as we're coming up on the bottom of the hour, just so people know. This is really it's kind of fun. Once again, I'm not going to Hawksfest just to play around and I don't know, shoot guns and give a rebel yell and play Rat Patrol out there. We are going to work. Actually, we're going to be transmitting from there. They're going to be shooting videos, doing all kinds of things. So as I said, I need $500 for a flight to get out there. I want to thank my good buddy Andy Burlington out of England. He sent $50. David Shelke and his beautiful wife Lorna, lovely person. She said, "My husband is not in good health, so I can't travel. So here's to help you get to Hawkfest, Lorna." So thank you so much. He contributed $50. Want to thank Jerry Stanfill, or Jerry Montana, as we also call him. So thank you, Jerry. He contributed $50. So with Nighthawk's $50, we've got $200 raised against the $300. So hopefully by the end of the show, Come on, man, give me. Let me borrow $50. Come on. I asked. I told you I was up in Seattle, and I went to the Seahawks game, and I was on the sideline, and Pete Carroll's a friend of mine, and he walks over and he introduces me to the guy that owns Microsoft, who's the the fellow that owns the Seahawks, and he says,
Steve Ballmer?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
the other guy. Paul Allen.
Paul Allen. Sure.
Paul Allen
Yeah.
was walking over, very tall man. He's got all his Seahawk gear. And he walks over and says, Paul Allen, I want to introduce you to my best friend, Sean Morton. And what do you say to a guy that he owns a team? So I shook his hand and I said, hey, Paul, nice to meet you. Can you loan me $50? And Paul Allen, I'm not kidding. Paul Allen goes, no, why do you think I'm so rich? And he walks away. And Pete just looks after him, both laughing, and Pete goes, well, that was weird. And he also told me the story, and I have to tell the story again. He said that Mr. Allen, when the Ebola virus broke out in Africa, Paul Allen decided that he was going to take it upon himself. And this is one of the few – I tell you this story, Cliff, because this is one of the few stories of one of these super mega rich guys that had no ulterior motives that really – just stepped up to the plate. And Paul Allen said, I'm going to take personal responsibility. I'm going to stop this disease in Africa. And he wrote a check that nobody knew about. He wrote a $100 million check. He outfitted 8 747s that then went to Sierra Leone and went to Monrovia and went to all these Ebola outbreak places. And basically outfitted them completely as flying hospitals. And they went over there and they treated every single person they could get their hands on with Ebola and put a complete stop to the virus. And Fox News was going crazy saying there's going to be 50,000 people that have this stuff by October and whatever else. And Paul Allen, behind the scenes, wrote a $100 million check, said he didn't want anybody to know, got no publicity, didn't hire the PR guys, didn't do anything to stop this virus. And, of course, the other rumor was that they took all the Ebola patients and they put them in Meadowlands Stadium in New York because nobody's caught anything there for about 20 years. That's a football joke. Okay.
Yep. There you go.
All right. So so I want to say we've got $200 raised. We need $300 more. Pony up. Come on. Give me $50. I'll make sure we mention your name on the air. And $50 pays. By the way, I am going to assume the mantle of the Pope for just a moment. I am giving sin licenses. Therefore, and these are good for the Catholic Church, and so for $50, I guarantee we'll pay any back karma that any of you have. So, and if you want to do something in the future, like steal a pig or do whatever, I issue in advance a sin license for you to go out and do whatever it is you want to do, and you will be forgiven by Pope Sean for $50. Cliff I, by the way, so I want everyone flouncing to this. One head to the side, 2, 3. Other head to the side, 2, 3. Music for Melissa and Constance to dance to. And take it, Vince Guaraldi. Right here in the middle somewhere, the LSD kicks in. All right, well, the happy music is going on as of tomorrow. They are actually flying me. They actually fly me places to go talk to people. They're taking me to the International Institute of Health and Spiritual Sciences. I'm going to be up in Montreal. So you can actually check that out on the website, iihss.org. So for all you Canadians, you Canuckians, come on, your houses have all melted anyway. You're wandering the tundra like buffalo. So come on over to Montreal where they have a few igloos left that they're building. Oh, here's where the LSD kicks in. So come on out to Montreal. I'm going to be speaking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to try to get on the radio to do the program. I may or may not. I know I can't Thursday because I'm on a plane, but Friday night I might be able to do the show, and then, of course, Saturday, Sunday. And then I'm there Monday, Tuesday. So I'm going to try to do the program, but theoretically, hypothetically, I am going out into the wilds of Canada to go see a famous psychic surgeon. I'm not even sure if I get an appointment with him because the Canadians just all, they take like 6 weeks off and they all disappear into the trees and they all go confer with I'm at the wrong pole here. I was going to say they all go confer with their Nazi overlords where they run the world from their base, but that's at the South Pole. So the North Pole is what? Camp Century. We actually have something up there in the ice called Camp Century that's run by an atomic reactor or something where there's plenty of hot water, according to the propaganda video. But anyway, I'm going to be in Montreal, and I teach up there for the week. The conference is fantastic, and it's run by Marilyn Rosner, and John Rosner just died last year. But so there you go. And then from there, I'm actually then going to be flying. What am I doing? Yeah, I think from Canada. I think I'm flying directly to. I'm going to try to then loop it in such a way so that I then go to San Francisco, and then I show up in Louisville, Kentucky, or KY. Yo, mama's so dumb. She thinks that KY jelly is jam that comes from Kentucky. That's how dumb your mama is. And so I'm going to go to I'm going to fly to I think there, and then I got to go back up home to Reno to go see my sister and my nephews and all that, and go do some stuff up there. So I'm going to be bouncing around. So yeah, Canada is like France crossed with Spain, crossed with a bunch of Cree Indians, but they take 3-hour lunches and a nap because there's not much to do up there. Also, let me just say thank you so much again to Andy, to Lorna and David Schilke, to Jerry Stamphill, and of course to Nighthawk for contributing to the fund for me to go to Hawksfest and work Hawksfest, by the way, because apparently I'm doing some kind of routine on stage and doing all the stuff there. So those are the announcements for today, and please do not throw the spaghetti in the lunchroom. Thank you so much. So, you ever notice on MASH? Did you ever see MASH?
Occasionally, yeah.
Not only the TV show, but the movie that you never actually know who the announcer is, the guy on the PR, because usually it's supposedly Radar, but the guy actually making the announcements. So, which gives the theory that the MASH camp was in fact hell or purgatory of some kind, and that's the voice of God. Any opinions?
No.
I'm just saying. Because I had a similar theory worked out for Gilligan's Island, where I was convinced that was. I know that Gilligan's Island is the show that Lost was based on. I'm not kidding. I was in Hawaii where they said, we'll let you shoot anything for free in Hawaii, and 2 Disney executives. And I was in this meeting with Laura Lingle, who was the governor, that said, hey, what if we crossed Gilligan's Island with the Twilight Zone? And that was the concept for the not kidding. I was there in the conversation. And I do have an idea that Thurston Howell is greed, that Ginger was lust.
Oh, sure. That's pretty much acknowledged. Yeah, the 7 deadly sins. Yeah, that the skipper was he was big and fat. What's that one? That's gluttony. Oh, I don't know which one sloth would be, but somehow, some way, I'm pretty sure that they represent the 7 deadly sins, and that would make Gilligan Satan as actually, because you remember every time they tried to get off the island, he would thwart whatever was going on. I know he always screwed it up.
That's my loss through Gilligan's Island. Okay, let's get back to the questions here. And once again, please contribute $50. I have $300 left to make my fare here. If I could just get, as I said, 5 more people to donate $50 a piece. We're trying to make this a team effort so I can go to Hawksfest and go flounce around the country, according to my wife. We really need those donations. So between now and Friday, we'll try to push this to get that. And of course, we have some of the greatest guests in the universe. Of course, Cliff High. All right, let me see. All right, let's start. We were having off the air. We were talking about the elections, but this was your personal opinion. You want to express your personal opinion?
Sure. I mean, it's just that we've had my personal opinion. The reason I don't do the elections and the data is because it's too emotionally hot on each side. There's no nuance. There's no shading in between. And so it's very difficult. It would be a weighted interpretation that would be basically a guess just on the sheer amount of data one side or the other, and I don't find that meaningful. My own personal opinion is that Trump is smart. He's stuck in desire mind. So everybody thinks of him like Shlomo characterized it as an egomaniacal fellow, but he's very smart, determined, et cetera, and he's an obstacle to the powers that be, the criminal class, and so he can't be allowed to proceed, and he won't be. Now, in the data, we have other.
So you're saying he's challenging the criminal class? You don't think
exactly.
that Trump is part of that?
No, I do not think he's part of that. You actually find, well, you were discussing millionaires. I've known millionaires and billionaires here that are not part of the criminal class at all. Many of them are actively engaged in counter efforts to try to ameliorate some of their effects. So not all these individuals that have money necessarily are part of that particular cadre. In fact, it's relatively small, as you know, in terms of the number of people, and they are very tightly held. They don't let in the funny-haired nouveau riche. You got to be bloodline material to get into this clique. You know,
I told you in 2004 they invited Bill Gates to the Bilderberg conference.
Yeah.
And I told you what happened. He was like, somebody came up to him. This is a true story. Someone came up and said, who are you? He says, well, I'm Bill Gates. I own Microsoft. And this guy said, really? I own France. And, and he never got invited back. He did something there that he did not get invited back until they needed him again. And apparently he just started returning these conferences back in about 2013.
Which was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in their vaccine. Yeah.
Anybody that uses the word vaccines and population control in the same sentence just needs to be stopped.
Yeah.
I'm saying. All right. So no opinions about this. You just think Trump will not be allowed to do this. And
correct. One way or another, he can't be controlled now that Jesse Ventura says, "Hey, let's hook up and kick ass." He's really an extra special danger because they ran into that situation where they could control Jesse, but only Barry. Just barely in there. So now it's going to be a situation of if the two of them actually got any traction, something disastrous would have to befall them because the Republican Party is due this. They think this. I mean, the people that are in power there, and they are not going to be derailed by yet another. What was that guy's name that did the third party thing?
Ross Perot.
Perot, exactly. Yeah. They don't want another Perot happening, right? So they don't want Trump to go out and about on his own, and they're afraid of that. It would be good for Hillary or for whoever is going to be taking her place because the money is fleeing her right now. They see her as tainted, stinking meat.
Yeah.
And so they're going to any other Democrat that they can if you just follow the donations. And now it's all the language is coming up about basically about over half the language you see about her now is disparaging. So at the height of her popularity, maybe only 25% of the language crossed a particular line. Now at least half, if not over that, does. So she's on her way down. No question.
Wait, so you do have WebBot stuff on this? You're telling me no, I don't do this, but you're telling me that you do.
Those are statistics. Okay, those are not forecasts. That's just a statistical part of the data set that, I can look and I can see that, X amount of words related to this subject or of this character. But is it meaningful in terms of a prescient forecast? No, but it may be meaningful in the sense of our discussion now, just based on how the population is feeling about her.
Well, I just noticed that anybody that gets in her way wakes up dead. I just noticed that.
Yeah.
Anybody gets in her way, including JFK Jr. And let me just say here that this is aided in no small part by here you have Roger Ailes and Fox News, which is the de facto propaganda wing of the Republicans. And the GOP has for years been actively fanning the flames of anti-immigration, anti-government paranoia, white male resentment of feminists, scary brown people, the moocher class. So you have this conservative echo chamber that is just created for Donald Trump to step in and start screaming. And he's just proving more adept at now channeling the right-wing anti-establishment anger than any of the other. We thought it was going to be Rand Paul, and we found out that Rand has been playing both sides of the fence for too long. So the GOP's in a real bind here because what they call this vulgar buffoon is clearly doing damage to the Republican brand. But if the party establishment openly condemns him, then he's going to run as a self-financed independent, which would then split the conservative vote and then hand the presidency to the Democrats on a silver platter. Any opinions?
Another aspect of that, you're quite correct, but another aspect of that is that he would walk away with those mental memes they've been building for these last 12 years, that they've been trying to get another Bush back in, right? And so they've been building these memes in the populace so that they could tick him over and use them. Now Trump has taken them; they're his. All of the anti-immigration, et cetera, all of that language is his now. If any of the other Republicans pop up with it, he's a Trump wannabe. So he'll walk away with their whole game plan.
Well, after Megyn Kelly went after him like a shark with blood in the water, I mean, you will notice every question that was asked of Trump was disparaging. Every question was,
the language was terrible.
You called women a fat pig. And if I was Trump, look, I would have said, no, I didn't call women a fat pig. I called Rosie O'Donnell a fat pig. And Most women would go, yeah, I kind of agree with him. But after he began boycotting Fox, because here's where Roger Ailes and the Fox guys are, and once again, they really got their knickers in a bunch here. Because then he begins boycotting Fox because of the behavior of Megyn Kelly. And then he goes to the news shows of rival networks, and now you have this panicking Roger Ailes, calls the Donald to make peace, offers him a visible platform on the network if only he'd say publicly that he'd forgiven Fox. And sure enough, then it gets announced that Trump would do 2 extended interviews on Fox. And let's face it, Fox News alone can't get rid of Donald Trump, even though they want, because he probably won't be the party's nominee. But the feelings of rage and and I don't know why people say that when he's double anybody else in the polls, and still they say, well, he won't be the nominee. Do people really think that he's not going to take New Hampshire? Do people really think that he's not going to take Iowa? Because, again, the feelings of rage and dissatisfaction that he's tapped into are going to have to go somewhere. When you have a candidate who says, look, this is easy. All I have to do is tell the Chinese or tell people, you don't want to build a factory here? Fine. You go build it in China. I'm going to tax you 35% for anything you bring in. That's simple. But when you look at Jeb Bush, who's completely bought, and we know who's going to run the government when he gets in, Rand Paul, who doesn't have a chance in hell, Ted Cruz, who's freaking Canadian, for God's sakes, and then everybody else you can just kind of toss on the rubbish bin. But I'm just getting worked up about it now. But you're with Hillary, just again, I don't think the dogs like her. And even though Jeb was the one that got picked at the Bilderberg conference, people forget that Rick Perry was picked, to run against Obama back in 2012, and he managed to trip on his down low, as they say. So okay, so let's get back into your actual predictive stuff. So people want to know about the black goo and. See, you have this whole opinion about nuclear winter as well, and I have yet to see definitive proof of the effects of Fukushima here on the West Coast or anywhere else for that matter.
Dude, you're not paying attention to any of the things in the ocean. The ocean all along the West Coast is dead. There's huge non-oxygen-related death zones all up and down the West Coast that are clustered where the Japanese current connects. We've had an uptick in the amount of radiation damage to airplane travelers, and it's showing up in hospitals. The radiation damage is showing up all over. If you just go look at the statistics for things like the number of days that these very intense, high-cost brain operating theaters are open, you find out we're booming business here. And before Fukushima, not so much. Maybe 60% of the time they were in operation.
Okay.
How do
you explain people actually with Geiger counters that I've seen that call me that just go out on, there's YouTube videos, people with Geiger counters on the beach in San Francisco, and they go out with the Geiger counters and say, well, it's not, normal radiation is 49 and the radiation out here is, 56 or something.
Okay. Couple of things. First off, nobody really uses Geiger counters anymore. The meters they're using have to be tuned and calibrated. If they're not calibrated, their results are meaningless. To buy a calibrated one, you've got to be spending at least $100+ for something that's fairly substantial, even the little handheld units. Okay. And I've had calibrated meters here. I've noticed that the clicks per minute. My background, I've had radiation meters here for so long because of the data coming out in 97. I got one in 98, and then I got another one in 99. And so I knew my background radiation levels were about 8 clicks every 5 minutes. And now we're up to the point where we're talking 49 to 60 clicks a minute. In these storms. But here's the thing. If you get rain, if you get ionizing radiation from the sun, so if you get a heat wave, radiation is removed from atmospheric detection. That's why you need a paddle style of radiation detector. Okay, the one that you can immerse in the water to detect the radiation in the water. If you do that around here, you find out that the radiation is washed away in the rains when they come down the sides of the Olympics and into the various flushing mechanisms of Puget Sound and the Hood Canal. If you go out on the Hoh River rainforest out here, you see that the trees are actually uptaking radiation, as are the mushrooms. We've had a higher level of radiation in all of the mushrooms around here, but you're not going to be able to detect that with a radiation meter that you're waving around in the air. Those things are not sensitive to radiation in materials. You have to know, are they clicking for alpha, beta, gamma particles, what the rate is, what the sensitivity is, and so on. So you can't take YouTube videos on any of this as meaningful. We're in the age of information, which I now have as a new motto. In the age of information, you know absolutely nothing unless you do it yourself. because there's so much disinformation. You don't know who to believe. We don't know if it was the CIA that took out the 3 ships of cyanide in China. We don't, or if it was an accident, although they've been sitting there for so long. It kind of begs the question, but we'll never know for sure. And that's the way it is with anything. Unless you do the test yourself or go read the study yourself, you can't trust the headlines. So,
well, if your portobello mushroom burger from Jack in the Box actually begins to glow in the dark, you probably get an idea.
well, yeah, but that'll be a little bit late, dude.
All right, so let's talk about black goo, because black goo is, I'm not sure if this is a promo of some kind, because they're redoing like 6 episodes of the X-Files coming up this spring. But you remember the black goo from X-Files?
No, I never saw it.
Okay, you probably never saw it. I was kind of confused about it, but there was a black goo on X-Files that maybe was an alien creature or had some kind of intelligence to it. So whatever. So people are now saying that the black goo is some kind of, I don't know, nanotechnology or something.
Yeah, which is a bunch of hooey. Okay. It's shenanigans of mental thought. They're not really thinking about this in a realistic way. If you go and look at what the nanotechnologies are these days, they're very, very, very dangerous. People recognize that they're dangerous. The production of the nanospheres or whatever granules or particles that you happen to be dealing with has led to industrial fatalities. And so there's been an OSHA response to that over the last 5 years. And the black goo it's never been proven that there's nano anything in it. That's just a label that was applied to a substance that was not easily identified, but for all intents and purposes shares a lot of the same characteristics as petroleum. If you go in and look at the actual studies that are showing up. Now, in our data sets, we have another set of issues that are relative to the environment, especially now that the chemtrails are waning. The data sets a long time ago showed that as the chemtrails went, we would be hit by this situation we've got now, which is the banding of the planet into heat and cold zones. And this is a result of the powers that be trying to keep things in a period of stasis weather-wise, because they think they have a certain series of conclusions that they've made that I would dispute, but they're acting with the chemtrails, with HARP, with all of this stuff on those conclusions, and they're 100% wrong, and they're screwing us over in a serious way. But I'm convinced that at least some of them think that their assumptions are valid, and they're acting in good faith on these, right? Sort of the 15 kind of a group. But in any event, the environmental issues we're going to face here is what happens when they have to shut HARP off, or the combined energies of all of the HARPs, because this HARP up here runs independent on natural gas that's coming out of the tundra from methane in Alaska, but a lot of these are grid connected. And when the grid gets hit really hard by the upcoming winter and goes down, and some of these machines are shut off, we're going to jump into the thing that Isaac Asimov called the last phase of oscillation. The big rock, he called it. And you rock back and forth in the expanding planet every 100,000 years. And so far, our planet has been lucky, and every 100,000 years, we've gone into an ice age. If we don't go into an ice age, the oceans die. It gets too hot. There's no oxygen. The pelagic zone is dying now even. This year, by the way, you'll see massive, massive shortages of fish all around the planet, and it'll hit the grocery stores near you, where you'll be paying Japanese kind of tuna prices for trout. It's going to be that bad, dude. As we
wrap this up, so in the last 5 minutes, besides data that says that the internet conspiracy nutters achieve some kind of critical mass, and suddenly everybody believes in Planet X and whatever else in the sky is going to fall, or the network effect, as you call it.
Right. No, they're not going to believe in Planet X or any of that. The impact is different. It's not that.
Okay, but that's don't get off on this, because we don't have that much time. But if and when the revolution comes, or a World War III, or an alien invasion that, my Sands of Time book was talking about, that they were defending themselves against something that might come in the next decade. Talk about the breakaway civilizations. Is there in your data, Cliff, and I want you to search your heart and mind and soul for this, is there in your data a rapture event, an event where people's heart and mind and soul shifts, the language shifts, and suddenly we have something glorious happens. Is there anything like that, or does everything just get terrible and we should just all live in a tree?
No, by 2030 here, we'll be in the midst of the largest planetary renaissance we've ever seen, at least in terms of innovation and new devices and all of that. But we've got a rough 15 years ahead of us. But it's going to be called the years of struggle when we're through it, because we will get through it by about 2030. But at that point, we'll be in a really serious environmental crisis with the aftermath of all of this stuff they've been doing as we segue into the Ice Age. But it doesn't mean that things slow down. It just means that we adapt, we overcome, we go on.
So Tomorrowland happens, is what you're saying. But it just
Never
takes
seen
a
it,
while.
couldn't say.
Oh, okay. But I mean, I'm just saying that that a future world, a better place, because from what I'm seeing from the Breakaway Civilizations,
it's not that.
Hold on, let me finish my thought. From the Breakaway Civilizations, there's a beaded curtain in a Taiwanese whorehouse, and a Siamese whorehouse, literally, that seems to stand between us and the wonders and the glories and the things they have at places like Area 51, as an example. When does that start bleeding through, and can you predict it in the language as to when it starts bleeding through?
Sure.
The technology.
We've been looking at that in Space Goat Farts since about 2003. It was the cousin Alexei was a hybrid or an alien or a non-terrestrial guy that was in a jail that was disrupted. It was in the Ukraine. It's happening now. It was because of a war that was going on. We'll see the video fairly soon. We won't recognize it when we see it. That was in a data set that was 12 years out. That's now manifesting. I had no idea about the time frame I was dealing with, and I thought it was only 3 or 4 years at the time that came through. But yeah, we're going to go through a really rough time and end up in a different world. But it's not going to be this socialist utopia kind of thing. It's going to be a world of incredible chaos and challenge, in which humanity is a distributed mass. Invents here, gets the idea over there where it's needed, and so on, without all this centralized control stuff. So it's going to be chaos like you couldn't imagine. It's more like the Snake Street in Blade